The longest journey I ever had was not walking 500 miles from France across Spain. The longest journey I ever had was getting used to thinking with my heart and not my mind. Those 18 inches from your brain to your heart are the longest journey anyone will ever have.
Power Ace Radio.
Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of PAR Real Talk. Today I have a special guest as usual, Keith Cooper. Now, Keith, hello, how are you?
Hey, Polly, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for asking. Well, it's not about me, it's about you. So you give us a little bit more about, told us your name, tell us what you do, and please tell us where you're from as well, please.
Well, Polly, I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. Alaska is where I was raised. That's a most northern state in the United States, beyond Canada. And when I was up there, we also had a small little trailer and a cabin there in a town called Willows. So I like to say I grew up in just the Anchorage area of Alaska. And what I do now is I write, I do some consulting, I do a lot of volunteering, and I do a lot of hiking. And those four things really just combine my life and take my space up now with the time that I do have. Of all those things, I love being a father to my three kids, and I love to hike probably the most.
Love to hike. Oh, very interesting. So let's dive straight in.
Okay.
So we're here talking about the book, Taking the Mask Off.
Right here.
Now,
Yeah.
the way that title, like a mask, or are you masquerade? What's I know now, obviously, no, it's metaphorically, but what is the idea behind it? So bring us to what this title is about.
Polly, you hit it on the head. It's metaphorically a mask, right? And metaphorically, what we're talking about in this book, Taking the Mask Off, my journey from Dr. Seuss to the Bible. Keep in mind, Dr. Seuss is a cartoon character, and we all know what the Bible is. So my journey going from as a little boy watching cartoons on TV, the lessons of Dr. Seuss, Heckle and Jekyll, Bugs Bunny, whatever they might be, all the way to as I studied the Bible intermediate times with my parents. That's what the book is about. It was written during the COVID timeframe, as you can imagine, taking the mask off. But Paulie, it wasn't just for COVID. It was for the mask that we wear when we're not who we really are. The mask we wear to impress people, the mask we wear to conform, the mask we wear when we're really not happy because we're kind of sad. All those masks leave an imprint on our face. So the taking the mask off, metaphorically speaking, has using your words, is right, but it's not just the COVID mask at all. It's not about that mask. That mask came off. Most of us have that mask off now, but it's a mask that we have underneath that we wear every day that I say, take those off, be who you are, say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Hence the Dr. Seuss quote.
Wow, that is really, I like the way you finished that, rounded it up. So this whole journey started during COVID. Obviously, a lot of people went through different bits, but how did you think, I just want to write about my personal experience, and the others going through the same thing, but you have to be extra brave to be able to share your personal story. So was there a point in your time, obviously you've been writing that you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't share this one, or how did you get over all of that and think, no, I'm going to share my story?
Well, Paulie, there are about 200 stories that I wrote. I only published 65. So, the what's next may be publishing the other stories, but every story here is open source. It's an open book to me. And it's really about being vulnerable. It's really about opening yourself up and not trying to be someone you're not. And so I chronicle my journey in there with the hopes that you, your readers, others, your audience will do the same. Now, I never started to write a book. I never intended to write a book. I intended during COVID to journal. Why? Because the phones really stopped ringing. There's not much traffic out. We're out walking, we're by ourselves, we're lonely. So my normal routine was to get up, meditate for about 15 to 30 minutes, just sit there and look outside and just think. Um, then it was do a little bit of yoga, which I really got into. And then it was to journal every day. So I journaled about a page, page and a half using a felt tip pen, 5x7 memo pad. I think it was black and red, as a matter of fact, my favorite memo pad that I use. And I never intended to publish it. But when I started sharing it with my friends, they said, hey, there are other people who need to see this, who need to know what you went through, because they're going through the same thing. And that's why it became a book. So it never started out to be a book. It started out to be a journal for my kids to read about me, learn about me. Because although my parents who now are in heaven, I knew what they did, Paulie. I never knew who they really were. And I wanted my kids to know who I really was. And that this book chronicles that. It chronicles a journey. It also talks about ways I got back on track when I went on track. Every single one of these stories, I got off track a little bit. I didn't follow that road from Dr. Seuss to the lessons my parents taught me to the Bible. That was a pretty good road. Had some sway on it. But when I got off that road, I talked about how I got off. And oh, by the way, how I got back on.
Wow, that's really deep. I like that a lot. And to somebody, let's say somebody read the people that listen to podcasts or the people that will read the book. If there was, out of those 65 journals put together to one book, if there was one message for them to take away, like your main message of the book, what would it be?
It'd be to, well, no, that's a good question. And it's something I've been asked before, so I'm not just spouting it off. It's kind of the same answer that I give everybody. And the first thing that I would say, the main message is don't be judgmental. I mean, don't be judgmental. And the next thing that I would say is put yourself in my place or the place of someone else and write your own story, write your own journal, and make sure whatever you're doing today, Paulie, and your audience, make sure your ladder is leaning against the right wall. Because you're climbing your ladder fast doesn't mean it's the right ladder to climb. And you may be better being a Peace Corps volunteer than a corporate executive. You may want to volunteer in your church versus work on Wall Street. You may have other things. And I would just say, this book tells you, make sure your ladder is leaning against the right wall, follow your passion, and don't be judgmental.
That's great. That's a great message. One that I should take myself, and definitely hopefully the viewers do the same. So let's go on to my kind of next question. So
Okay.
You said about going from comfort to actually finding purpose.
Yeah.
So how did you go out? How does somebody navigate that? As they say, it's easier said than done. How do you envisage that to happen, or what are the steps to take?
Well, I think the writing itself was therapy, first of all. And when I talked about going from comfort to purpose, the step that I left out was something has to happen before you go from comfort to purpose. And typically it's pain. Typically it's a breakup, a relationship. Typically it may be a death of a family member. Typically it may be a loss. There's pain inserted when you go from comfort to purpose, because you have to go to that point low. And when you realize, as I say, sometimes you have to break a heart to open it. And that's kind of the way it works. And that's how you make that transition from comfort to comfort to purpose. You realize that sitting there comfortable, not doing what you want to do, or being afraid to go out is not you. You take that mask off, and you realize that everyone's here for a purpose. You're here for a purpose to educate your audience, to bring great viewers, to be aware of things, to do a lot of social interactions. You're doing that with your great audience you have all around the world. And that's why you're here. You love your job. They love you. So everyone has to get to the place you did. And I would imagine your journey wasn't always when you were 6 or 7 years old saying, I want to do this. Things happen in between. And whatever that is, that's your personal journey, of course. But that's how you go from that comfort of sitting there saying, okay, I have a job. I'm working 8 to 5. The bills are paid. I can watch football for 6 hours a day. Well, that's wonderful. Good for you. But the other thing is, what's your purpose? Maybe it's belonging to your church. Maybe it's helping a friend. Maybe it's taking a walk. You know, I also have to keep doing what I'm doing. I can't write this book and say I'm done. No more than you can stop going to the doctor and say you're well. You got to go every year, and you have to get that checkup by experts. But the problem we have is we typically get that checkup from our neck down. They come in and check our blood. They come in and check our knee. But you need to get your head up checked too once in a while. And it's not that you have mental health issues, Polly. It's that there's a lot of things in our crazy world, regardless of where you live, a lot of things that cause people to, hey, I'm stressed. I need some help. So that's why, again, we could go from, that comfort zone to purpose. And as I mentioned, about 2 months ago, I just completed the 500-mile Camino Frances. I had to get regrounded. So I jumped in a plane. I went to France and I walked from St. John Pier de Port across to Santiago. And that was my spiritual time to get back on that path from Dr. Seuss to the Bible.
Wow, that's really, really cool. Because for me, it's something that I do myself. Still living in the UK, I work in IT today, so sometimes it can get all stressful. You just take yourself away from that environment, clear your mind. I go, not so much hiking, but just go on holiday somewhere, just away from the situation, somewhere quiet, somewhere where you can actually think. So I really like that answer. It resonates with me myself. So I'm sure of the people watching this will get the same message. Let me kind of go into, so there's a bit where you touched about the shift of questioning, asking God why. Why me, God? Why does this have to happen? And after I've actually got this interview, there was then a little clip that I watched that came through, and it was this person asking, if you had to ask God why, what would you ask him? And the guy said, well, I wouldn't ask him anything, because why means who hurt you, and then it means who helped you, and then it means who how what was it? I think what helped you, kind of thing. So it starts a bit of, so for you, why do you think that journey, in shifting from why me, God, into you now, what are you actually trying to teach us?
Well, I think, again, you kind of alluded to it. A lot of us have this victim mentality of why me? And I think that as we went through the pandemic throughout the world, you, I, others had a lot of hardship. I lost my mom, lost relationship I was in, lost friends, isolation. I mean, if you look at all the things that could happen to any individual in the UK and the US, everything kind of happened during that year that was just not good. We saw people saying goodbye on an iPad, which is not the way you want to say goodbye to a loved one. So I think the transition I made was, instead of asking, why me, God, I went from why me, God, to God, what are you trying to teach me? And when you go from that transition from why me, to God, what are you trying to teach me? What have I learned? What God was trying to teach me was to write this book. What God was trying to teach me was to let people know that I have these issues, situations, really, that they're not necessarily good or bad. They're human. And oh, by the way, there are a lot of humans around the world that have the same thing. And that was my way of really working through that why me, God, to change it. Just a few words to God. What are you trying to teach me? And I had to open up my ears, and I had to open up my mind. But most of all, Paulie, as I talk about in the book, the longest journey I ever had was not walking 500 miles from France across Spain. The longest journey I ever had was getting used to thinking with my heart and not my mind. Those 18 inches from your brain to your heart are the longest journey anyone will ever have. And that's what I still go through. I mean, like I said, the journey is a reward. I'm still on the journey. I'm a ways down the journey, I think, in a positive way. But I'm not there, and I probably never will be there. We all have to keep trying.
No, that's really good. You kind of dive straight into kind of my next question as well, because you said kind of stop thinking with your brain, start feeling with your heart.
Right.
how has that actually influenced kind of your decisions from then when you decide, okay, now this is what I need to do. I know I need to just forget about the brain, feel it in my heart. So how
Yeah.
has since you began that journey, like how did it kind of influence your decision making? And secondly, since you started like that, has it been positive or slower than you envisage it to be?
I I'll take your questions kind of a segment at a time, and I'll tell you it's always been positive. So I'll start from the back up. It's always been a positive experience. How did I start thinking like that? I will tell you, the man I am now is not the person I was before. Okay. So the person I was before was a person thinking with my mind, not with my heart. And I'll give an example. You and I go to a restaurant, we order you know, fish and chips, whatever. We're sitting there drinking a beer, having that, and the person waiting on us is a little bit slow. They're not very good, right? The person waiting on us may spill a little beer on you or I as that person bumps by. Before, I would have been the person that really would have criticized that person. I would have said, I'm not going to tip them. What's going on? I want my stuff. Now I think of that person as my son or daughter. Now I think of that person has, how would I like someone to talk with that waiter or waitress if that person was related to me? Now, when I walk into a restaurant and they don't have salsa, I don't complain. I think of everything else that waitress or waiter is doing and saying they're trying to make ends meet, they're trying to get tips, they're trying to provide for a family. Quit being the bad person I am and enjoy why I'm really there, which is to socialize with you and others. And so that's kind of the start of it. You put yourself in their place, you put yourself and your family in their place. And the other thing you start doing is taking things off your calendar. I guarantee when you wake up in the morning, you probably got 15 things you got to do. Well, what I started doing is taking off about 5 of those things and saying, do I really need to do them? And having time to really think and asking, does it really have to be done today? I'm not talking about cleaning. I'm not talking about requirements. I'm talking about all the little things that kind of clutter up your day. And I started really just spending time looking out the window, spending time looking at the trees. And that has opened my mind to understand, to be that person I want to be, and also make that journey from my mind to my heart and really be more empathetic toward everyone, including driving. I mean, boy, I was not the best person to forgive drivers. And, you go up to a stop line or whatever, and you got merging traffic, let them merge, let them in. What difference does it make? You get home 30 seconds later, just let them in. And so that's really the whole part. Everything I talked about, we can do every day to make our lives better, the lives of others better, appreciate others more. But it's being that empathetic person that can smile a little bit more and say, it's okay, and thank you, I'm sorry, which is hard to admit, saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Try to put those words in your vocabulary.
That's really, really cool. Thank you so much for that. So let me kind of go into let's kind of digress a little.
Okay.
What I call a random question. So if there was, I talk about dishes a lot, so I would throw that word your way as well. Knowing about the sort of person you are, if there was a dish that would represent you from who you were to now who you are, what sort of dish would it be? Like, what sort of ingredients do we have in this dish to make the great person you are of today?
Yeah. I think I was a steak. If you talk about a dish, you're talking about dish, right? Okay. I think I was a steak and a potato before. I think now I'm a salad that has cheese, a little ham, green peppers, red peppers. I'm an assortment of ingredients that all nourish my body and my mind, but I also grow those in my garden to make sure that there's this, sustainable life that's out there. So I've gone from 2 ingredients to a blended salad and understanding the world better, understanding how it makes everybody think, and also healthier, just in this whole process. When I started writing and journaling, I've lost probably 30 pounds. And I wasn't heavy in the first place. I mean, I wasn't heavy. And then when I did the 500-mile walk, I lost 12, but I've gained about 5 of that back. But still, the meditation, the yoga, it has these indirect effects, as you and your readers and audience know, on the rest of your body. That's healthy. That's healthy. And you eat better, you sleep better, you choose better friends, you think better. It's just a healthy life that goes into it. And so that's why I'd say I went from a steak, which is a lot of red meat and, a lot of grease, to salad, more or less, and enjoying that.
That's really, really cool. Because I suppose to change your mind, you need to change what goes into your body as well. As you say, you are what you eat. So you got to feed yourself with some really good. I really like that answer, the way you broke it down. You definitely got my question and you answered it. So let's kind of let's cover this bit first. So there are a lot of people that want to know, where can we find, where can we find more? Where do you have a social media? Do you have a website? Obviously, your book is all over, Amazon. I typed it in and it just kind of flew off the pages of Google. So we know we can find out. But if they want a personal experience with you, or they want to get in contact with you, where is the best place to go? And what should they search for?
They should search for my website. And the website are 3 4-letter words in a row. The website is Long Lake Lore, lakelore.com. And when you go on that website, you'll see a little personal history of me. You'll see my parents back in the 60s and a little Keith sitting there. You'll also see blogs that I write and thoughts. And I'll also share some excerpts from the book in the website. So you get kind of all in one. And I just recently wrote a big blog on the Camino, which should be in next week. But that's how you keep in touch with me. On that website, you can email me and send me personal thoughts on the book itself if you read it. And it's also where I'll publish my next book, which I'm in the process of finishing up. It's a novel, and it's called The 16th Republic, and it's going to be out probably in December. And then again, I still have a lot of stories which I can tell from taking the mask off. So that website, www.longlakelore.com, has everything right there.
So Long Lake Lore, as in L-A-W.
L-O-N-G, Long, L-A-K-E-L-O-R-E, Lore.
L-O-R-E. Yeah. Okay, yep. That's Long Lake.
LongLakeLore.com. Yeah.
Right, that's great. We'll be sure to go and check that out. And let's go back into, we see you said there is it's a book in the pipeline. But what else do you have in the pipeline for us? What can we look forward to?
Well, I've always been a person who has been intrigued by the Cold War. The Cold War occurred, of course, in the 60s, the 70s, and the mid-80s, early 80s, and so on, between the United States, Great Britain, Russia, as you know from your history. So I've always liked the spy novels, those type of things that dealt with what goes on. So I wrote a book called The 16th Republic, where there's a fictional attack on the United States by a country for oil. And it talks really not about the attack, Polly, but it talks about the people who save the world from basically annihilation, and from a larger scale attack are people we see every day that we don't think that highly of. They're the people who are passed over in promotions. They're the people who aren't given high status in our socioeconomic status per se. They were common people who came to save the world during uncommon times. And that's my real thesis for the whole thing. Not necessarily attack, but those who save the world during that are people we see every day that we don't say hello to. We don't say thank you. We assume they'll do. They're bus drivers or janitors or people like that. And I bring them as characters in the book to really show that they are just like you and I. And in this book, truthfully, they're the heroes. And that's what I'm really trying to get across. I've always been a fighter for the underdog. Whenever there's a sports engagement going on, if I'm watching it, I ask who's the underdog, and that's who I root for, period, every time. That's just the way I am. And I think our society in general has to treat people as equals across the board and respect people. And if there's someone you don't trust, then let your judgment take place after you've learned who they are, not before. Trust them. Treat them with respect first. And that's what I ask.
Wow, that is, wow. I have nothing else to add, to be honest. It's really, really good. Um, so let's kind of go into my next bit. So you touched on in the book again, you touched on actually, let me leave that to the side. I'm going to pick back on what you said about, you've written this book. It started as a journal. You didn't start about writing it. So first question is, do you think everybody has a story to tell? Do you think everybody can write a book? Is it something that everybody can do, or do you have to be special, super special?
Well, I think it's something everybody can do. I mean, like I said, I didn't start this process off with saying I want to write a book. I can't tell you now how many I've sold. I mean, I'm not keeping track of that. I wrote this as a journal, and after people have looked at it and several I've shared it with said this needs to be something people see, it became something I published. But I think everybody has a story to tell, Paulie. I think we all do. And if you take a look at a lot of books that are out there, they're all kind of focused on skills, right? If you and I are in the podcast business, there are 30 books about how to do a podcast. If you and I are engineers, there are 50 books about how to be a better program manager engineer. You want to be a pilot, there are 1,000 books on how to be a pilot. But when you look at the issue of self-help, when you look at memoirs, when you look at the mental help that some people need, it crosses the common denominator of everybody, regardless who you are and what you do. It's something that can apply across the board, whether you're a school teacher or you're the Prime Minister of Great Britain. I mean, everybody can look at this and say, okay, they can see a piece of themselves in this book. And that's why I went ahead and crossed that spectrum, talking about someone like myself who has a lot of skills, but I didn't want to be skill focused. I wanted something that would apply across the board.
Wow, that's really cool. Thank you so much for that. And the next bit is as we're wrapping up. Now I asked, what would you want them to take from the book? But what would you like the viewers to gain from this? Or we spoke about the book, we spoke about you, we spoke about COVID. Well, if there was one message that people are watching this podcast that they should take away from your life, before, now, and in the future, what is the main message for those people?
I think the main message I would say is, depending on who I'm speaking with in your audience, if it's a young group, pre-20-year-olds, I would say, don't put a mask on, be who you are the rest of your life. You're great. If you want to take a year out of school and go travel by Europe on a train, go do it now. If you want to work, fine. But don't try to conform. Try to be who you are. Pick the friends who accept you for who you are. Don't pick the group that's like you. Okay, so that's the first group. For those who are the older group who have probably had a little bit of mask or imprints on, I would say that everybody's on the journey, including myself today, to be a better person. Wake up every day and try to be the person you want to be tomorrow, not the person you were yesterday. And that's what I'd like them to think about.
That's really great. Thank you so much. I hold that to my heart. Thank you. So I just time is running low. I just like to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure. I could literally talk to you all day long. Well, fortunately, we have limited time. So any closing remarks from you, Keith?
Well, Paulie, let's do it again. I mean, we're getting low on time now. As time progresses, I'd love to come back and speak with you and learn from you and learn from your viewers. So I love your show and what you do, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. So until we meet again, it's been a pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Power Ace Radio.